Warning, what you're about to hear may contain mature language, adult situations, and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey, have you seen this Instagram that's just snails doing human things?
No.
It's pretty great. It's like this person who builds like these little human world sets, like miniature restaurants and
then just unleashes snails in them?
real snails in them. Yeah, it's pretty delightful. It's the Instagram is just ALEIA. That's it. I would check it out, and anyone at home listening to this, check it out.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a look. I love kooky stuff online.
I'm looking at it right now, and there's some snails eating burgers in a fast food restaurant.
Oh, that's tremendous.
Snails on an airplane.
No one's tired of those.
No. The snail is in the chair looking out the window. It's eating the airplane food. It's got a little carry-on bag. It's pretty great. This is great. This is a really good Instagram. It's
do snails dream of electric sheep?
There's snails bowling, and they're pushing the balls.
No.
This snail just got a strike. I'm going to send this to you.
Is that snail bowling the best game of its life, do you think?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect game. No problem.
Oh, yeah, I just got it.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of ties into what we're talking about today.
Yeah, aren't we all just snails?
Snails in a simulation.
Pushing along a bowling ball without really any clear understanding of why we're here or what we're doing.
Oh yeah, there's a book. The person who did the website made a book called Snail World.
Did the book come first, or did the social media presence?
The social media presence was first, and then there was a book just collecting the greatest hits.
What a time to be alive! It used to be that like you would come up with an idea like that for an art project, and you would have to go and photograph everything, and then turning it into a book would be really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like you can just get that done. There's like nothing holding. Like you can write a book, you can create a website, you can make a movie, you can literally do anything you want.
Yeah, it's quite a time to be alive.
Yeah.
They also on this Instagram. There's a frog on a jet ski. That's pretty cool. Oh man, a snail being abducted by aliens and being carried up into the ship.
Now, see, that's really contrived. Like, a snail is far closer to an alien than literally any other organism, and I don't buy that for a second.
Well, that's why
the snail should be piloting the UFO.
It's just going home. It's just like getting picked up for lunch.
Oh, yeah, it's just getting dropped off after soccer practice.
Exactly, yeah. Well, what are we talking about today? We haven't even done an intro. Let's say, hey everyone, it's me, it's Elliot. Keith is here. We're going to talk about a movie.
This is the Trash Heap Movie Podcast.
The show where we talk about movies that people didn't give a fair shake to, movies that were overlooked.
We give discarded gems a second chance.
We crawl through the trash and take those up to the top of the heap.
Are they always a hidden gem? No. Sometimes we roll the dice and we lose. And in the case of Dreamscape, we lost big time.
We made mistakes.
My favorite thing about Dreamscape, though, is that tons of people seem to love this movie, and for seemingly no reason. I think it's some kind of a nostalgia effect. It's Stockholm Syndrome from their nightmares about the Snake Man. It's a kind of a misplaced affection for a young name. What's his
Dennis
name?
Quaid.
Dennis Quaid. Young Dennis Quaid. I don't know.
No, so we went in on this thinking that it was probably some sort of forgotten gem, but it turns out that it's not forgotten at all. People love it, and you and I don't like it. It's the reverse scenario.
I will say this, though. I just saw a video that used sort of the greatest hits, like the highlights and coolest scenes in the movie. And when you juxtapose all those moments together, it does look really cool. And I think that's where people get stuck is they just remember those highlights and they forget everything that happens in between and kind of the movie, what the movie becomes when it's finished and when you've seen the whole thing. And so I understand.
No, totally. I think it is also just like how we've done like 2 episodes in between Dreamscape and now, and like we just can't stop talking about how much we hate it.
Yeah, I keep thinking about it. And now Friday Night Frights is returning to the Blue Mouse Theater in Tacoma, and lo and behold, what are they showing?
No.
Dreamscape.
It's not even a Friday.
So go find out for yourself. Get your little $10. Take your ass down to the Blue Mouse Theater and go watch it.
I think it's only like $5 at the Blue Mouse.
No, it's $10.
They
had to jack up the price, man. It's hard times. Hard times, baby.
When was the last time you were in a theater, Keith?
Oh God, I don't even remember. I've got the I almost said Pantages Theater. I have the I can't remember anything today. Holy shit. What the fuck is the name of the theater by my house? I don't know. There's a nice tiny little theater where you can stand upstairs behind the neon sign. It's super cool. I don't remember the name of it, but I haven't been back yet. So yeah, it's been like, I don't know, probably 2 years.
Oh, so even pre-COVID.
Yeah, a little bit.
It had been a while. Okay.
But it's also, I mean, that's kind of been the thing. Hold on here. Let me see if I can look back and find out what the last movie I saw was. I don't think it was... I wish I would have seen Mandy in the theater, but I didn't because I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah. I wish I'd seen that in the theater, too. I mean, I definitely saw a couple of movies right before everything shut down, so I can't remember what they were specifically, but I'd been to the movies recently. I've yet to go back.
Weird. I feel like I saw Midsummer on in a theater, but I probably just watched it on a big TV.
Do you not like going to the theater?
No, I do. I just don't like other people being in the theater while I'm watching a goddamn movie. Which is absurd, right?
It depends. I kind of sometimes.
Oh, it might have been us.
Oh wow, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like an audience can enhance a movie experience. Like a funny movie's funnier with an audience, scary movie's scarier with an audience. But if the audience has to be right, you know.
Oh, unquestionable. I had some great movie theater experiences with Cabin Fever and Freddy vs. Jason and movies like that. But then I remember going to see the original Halloween and being like annoyed by the audience with that. So
when I went and saw The Witch, it was very clear that everyone there thought they were seeing thought they were going to see something that would be more akin to like a Saw movie. And they made the experience pretty crappy because everyone's like, "What the fuck is this? Nothing's happening." Blah 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 blah.
I don't think that trailer sort of created that misconception at all.
I saw it in a theater in Lakewood, so you know.
What a mean comment.
It was mean. I stand by it.
I'm glad we're talking about our movie theater experiences because our movie today, which is yet another entry in the sci-fi summer, sci-fi meaning science fiction, is The Matrix Reloaded, and I believe the year was 2003.
That sounds about right.
Wow, what a time to be alive. And there is nothing particularly remarkable about this movie theater experience aside from the fact that throughout a good chunk of this movie, everyone just sat in silence trying to comprehend the words that they were hearing these characters speak. I mean, they just struggled to grasp these concepts and notions and just the baffling exposition that would be said.
Yeah, this was a movie that a lot of people were really pissed off at when it came out. And I remember I suggested we do this one because I remember you saying a while ago that this is your favorite Matrix movie, which I thought was pretty surprising.
Yeah, it's funny because this actually didn't become my favorite Matrix movie until I received the DVD as a Christmas gift.
So you saw it in the theater.
I saw it
and
in
you
the
were like,
theater and I was like, huh, I don't know about this one. And then I think maybe 2 years later, I got the DVD and buddy, it actually took my level of appreciation increased just because there's some really great special features. It was like a Warner Brothers like 2-disc set with a lot of behind the scenes on the stunts and action set pieces and things like that. And then it also includes the MTV Movie Awards intro sketch featuring Will Ferrell, Sean William Scott, and Justin Timberlake. And it is that creative piece of business that has sort of solidified my affinity for the movie.
The MTV Music Awards.
I was so happy to have that on the DVD that I would just pop that movie in just so I could watch that little bit.
Now, do you think that bit is actually good, or do you think it's funny in its dubious execution?
I think it's extremely amusing, and I love the way they spoof the architect character.
Oh, Will Ferrell!
I think
Will Ferrell
tremendous.
is legitimately funny in the skit, but the rest of it is, I find, to kind of be like cringy in its.
Oh, it's juvenile, it's idiotic, but
just like the whole thing where, like, I don't know, like, I don't have anything really against either of those two guys, but that was definitely at the height of them being just kind of like stars for nothing type of thing. And that part where, like, Justin Timberlake's just beating up Agent Smith by dancing.
and then at the end it's a big fart joke.
Yeah.
He's like, who farted? And they all start laughing.
That's like, honestly, all of those movie spoofs with for the MTV Movie Awards. Did the same thing with Batman Begins, where it's Batman's like is making fart jokes, or they're editing it so it looks like Batman's talking about how he just farted.
I feel like those properties are easy to make fun of too. I think
Yeah.
they're just ripe for good spoofing, and I think they really nailed it on this one. I'm a
All
fan. I'm a fan.
All right. Well, we didn't come here to talk about MTV. Wait, did we?
Why not? Let's take a walk.
Let's just-
Through
Let's forget this.
TV's
The Matrix
past.
Reloaded. No, but people really. I remember when it came out, I did not have the negative reaction, quite the same negative reaction that a lot of people seem to have. I didn't think it would.
Well, the original Matrix was so mind-blowing and set the
Yes.
bar so high. It's like,
Yep.
how do you follow that up? And if you watch the entire series, like, you can really see, like, all the creative energy and inspiration was, like, it was front-loaded into that first movie. And then the other movies sort of, I don't want to say devolve, but I guess they devolve into, like, a pretty straightforward, sci-fi war scenario with a culminating fight scene in at the very end. But
Yeah.
it becomes like very straightforward, and all this sort of new and exciting ideas kind of just fizzle out.
Well, I think I definitely like I think the sequels more than most people, and the first one, I think there's just a thing too to be like, when it came, people sometimes talk about like, oh, it's dated or it's corny or it was ripping off these movies, which is all true. But also when it came out, it was like you just said, like, it was mind blowing and really cool. And you go back and if you watch it objectively, it's still all of those things, and it overcomes all of its weaknesses, which is mostly just like some corny dialogue and some dated musical choices.
Well, I love that all of the movies are simultaneously dated and still fresh at the same time.
Right,
There's
yeah.
definitely aspects that are like eye rolling and corny and everything. But then there's stuff that is still, more inspired and still feels cool today.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest problems they probably ended up with the sequels is with the first movie, narratively, they wrote themselves into some corners with how the first movie concluded.
Or they could have easily stopped with that first movie and had just a...
I mean, even though you don't see the actual Matrix coming down at the end of the movie, it's pretty much clear cut that that's what's going to happen in the immediate future.
Mm-hmm.
It's just showing you something that you don't necessarily need to see because we already watched this event occur, and it seems very definitive as a conclusion. But then when the inevitable sequel comes along because of its success and the way they wrote up how powerful Neo is, like, well, how do you have a sequel to that? What obstacles is he going to face?
Yeah, he sort of becomes this godlike, impervious character, and it's like, okay, well...
And you could have a sequel to that, but it can't be a kung fu movie as well. Like, it can't just be him fighting, like, doing karate moves against programs, because he immediately when the next movie starts, he's not as powerful as he was at the end of the next movie. There's these new programs that are supposed to be more powerful, but they don't actually seem more powerful because then other characters also fight them, and it just seems that he has superpowers when it's convenient to the plot and doesn't have them when they want to have a cool fight scene. So there's some narrative issues that they I'm sure encountered because of how they wrote the first one. And also I think it's definitely, there's a case of like, man, this movie is such a hit, we are geniuses, every idea we're going to throw out on the screen is going to be great.
Well, the first movie actually hilariously ends with a notion that will come up again in Matrix Reloaded, and that is hope, the quintessential human delusion.
Right.
And it really is like a satisfying, like, oh, Neo's on the phone, he's going to go rescue more people, they're going to build an army and, save humanity. Like, oh, cool. Like, great.
Yeah.
Like, that's all I needed to know. I'm all set. And then here at the start of Reloaded, we show up, Neo is not impervious to dreams and nightmares, but he has achieved godlike status as far as his abilities inside the Matrix.
Right. Now, I don't want to get into too much talking about the flaws of the sequels yet, because we're here to talk about why this movie is one better than a lot of people give it credit for, and why it's specifically your favorite Matrix movie. Beyond just like the DVD features, right?
I mean, what else is there beyond the DVD features?
Oh, well, I guess the movie itself.
I do love it. It starts off like nice and hot because you don't even get you barely get a title sequence, right?
Right.
It's literally just smashing through the logo into, I can't remember if they actually show the title or not, but it's more of that green, sort of Asian inspired code information that makes up the Matrix. But it might say Matrix Reloaded.
I think it does. I think it does that. That's pretty much kind of how the first one starts too. The code turns into, like you're saying, the Matrix, and then boom, right into the movie. There's no like starring title cards or directed by. All that comes at the end. No,
who gives a crap?
Yeah.
I do like the title though, Matrix Reloaded, because it's not only a reference to obviously the sort of gun porn and fetishizing of weapons from the first one, right? It was like it was all about I need guns, lots of guns, or whatever.
Popping in them clips.
Yeah.
Although
so satisfying.
The funny thing is, in this movie, they never actually reload. They just throw their empty guns away and pull out new guns. So
there's a couple scenes where they actually reload. I actually paid like really close attention to that for some reason. But you're right. There is a lot of scenes where they are just pulling out guns from these outfits that like are impossibly skin tight and do not have any pockets. But it is also the Matrix, right?
Right. No, the guns definitely run out of bullets in the movie. Like, it's not like those guns that just fire forever in some movies, but Yeah, the only time they reload guns is when they're in the real world in Zion, and if they have to reload those mech suits.
Oh, they don't even have any good guns in the real. I hate Zion so much. That's so boring and ugly and stupid. It's the dumbest place of all time.
You're not gonna like what I have to say about the
Oh
Matrix
my
Revolutions.
god. Well,
You're really not gonna like it.
I think you hit on something though, like because they've hacked the Matrix, right? Everything they can do is sort of cheat codes, right? So
Right.
you can't necessarily apply like this consistent logic to it because it's like they're hacking it, it's glitching, they're doing weird shit to like control it. And
Yeah.
so you're not bound by like, oh, if you know the guns running out of bullets is probably part of the Matrix inherent programming, right? But
Right.
their ability to, pull out weapons and get new weapons is probably a function of their hacking the Matrix, right? And so you can do all these crazy things, that don't necessarily have any consistency between them. And the same with, some of the interactions with the agents. But I do feel like that opening fight scene with Neo, he really is just kind of toying around with those agents. He has
possibly.
reached a supreme power level, like a near omnipotence inside the Matrix, where he is completely calm at every turn, and he could waste these guys, without breaking a sweat.
Possibly, but then also later in the movie, you have that weapons fight at the Merovingian's palace, which is one of the coolest fights in the movie.
Oh, it's one of the greatest fights of all time. The one in the chateau with the staircase.
Yes,
oh yeah,
it's of the whole trilogy. It's one of the best fights,
without question.
But he's definitely, obviously, the victor fighting against like five guys or whatever. But it's not him just like doing it in his sleep. He still has to work for it.
Well, and I think too, there's an element of these aren't people that he's encountered before. These are different types of programs or whatever you want to call them, because he's used to fighting agents.
Sure, but I mean, at the end of the first movie, he like comes back from the dead. So So theoretically, we shouldn't even worry about him dying anymore because he can't die, right?
Oh no, and I think that the air of that sort of permeates this entire movie. It's at no point is he in any real danger,
except when he's not in the Matrix, which is maybe why he's not in the Matrix for so much of Revolutions.
Well, that's something that I have such a problem with, because like here you have these people who are fighting for their lives against, extermination vis-a-vis technology, right?
Right.
And yet they sort of fetishize and embrace and even, enjoy and prefer their time inside the Matrix, because that's where they can be their best selves and feel the most powerful. And they go in there to do all the most important stuff.
Right.
Yet that's not even the real world. And somehow this world that is largely controlled by the machines, they think they can just go in and start affecting change in the real world. It's the same problem I had with Ready Player One. Mm-hmm. I was like, if you think somehow that like you going inside this idiotic video game is going to solve your problems, it's not.
Yeah. Or is it?
It's not. It's literally not.
It? Yeah.
It's not.
It's not.
I fucking hate Ready Player One, that stupid piece of shit movie.
It was really bad.
It's arguably one of the most infuriating. I didn't stop watching it, but goddamn, if that wasn't one of the most infuriating movie experiences of my life. Just the beating over the 80s were the best time to be. Blah, blah, blah. Shut up. I like the 80s, but good God.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Anyways, back to the Matrix Reloaded, which is great.
Yeah, well, what is great about? I mean, obviously, there's some flaws. There's flaws in all of them. There's some, like we said, some corners they've roped themselves into. But what is great? What do you really love about the Matrix Reloaded?
Well, I think the important part is to consider where we're starting, right? So the character of Neo, right? He was a hacker working at a dead end day job, and he slugged down the red pill thanks to Morpheus, and now he's awake to the world around him, that the machines are coming to kill everybody, and there's no way out unless he can, I guess, master the martial arts and take everybody down.
Yep.
And after seemingly destroying his arch nemesis, Agent Smith, we're now, I guess, like speeding closer and closer towards fulfilling this prophecy of the One, being the savior of humankind and ending the war against the machines. And so it starts off with Neo having a anxiety-fueled dream about watching his girlfriend, get murdered, and she goes splat right into a car.
So you love that his girlfriend dies.
Oh, I love a dream sequence where someone
Yeah.
goes splat into a car.
Yeah.
I was looking at some GIFs of that scene, and I thought that someone had added that car splat like as a joke,
right.
and it's like it's really in there. Like, no shit, it's in there. That's great. Yeah, you get like they open. It's really nice that they open with like a bullet time sequence, just to like, hey, here's that stuff that everybody loves, right? Everything's all
Right.
slowed down. It's got the concentric circles and the waves coming off the bullets, and look at the agents all. He's got the slick back hair and the suit. Like, here's all the stuff you love about the Matrix, right? And then we wake up and we're back in Zion.
Right.
And it's ugly, it's dirty, it's full of pipes. Everyone's wearing the same, like, ratty-looking sweater. What is the point in survival, honestly?
That's the thing. It's like, honestly...
What are they clinging to? What quality of life are they
the
clinging
Matrix
to?
seems much more desirable than being awake in Zion. Like, in the first movie, when Keanu Reeves goes like, so I guess like no one can go back once you're woken up, and Lawrence Fishburne goes like, no, but even if you could, would you want to? And the answer is yes.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
definitely.
I would.
Yeah.
I would go back into the Matrix rather than eat like oatmeal that comes out of a spigot.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
Well,
what is your life like if you stay a battery for the machines, right? You're in the Matrix, you're doing whatever. You have all these memories of just living a normal life, right?
right.
And then, once you exhaust your usefulness, then they discard you. Your life ends in your own mind, right? So what's wrong with that?
Well, I mean, obviously they kind of set it up in the sense that like Neo doesn't seem to be anyone who has any family or is happy in life. So
When he's agitated, right?
right. So obviously he's the perfect choice to be pulled out of the Matrix, but it's not taking it into account that even in this dream world, it's still your actual thoughts, and your thoughts are having actual interactions with the thoughts of other people. It's not solely a dream because it's collective. It's not just my imagination, You are interacting with other people in there, and they do try to explain certain of that stuff away, why they justify killing all these, innocent people left and right.
That's one thing that I've always wondered. Are we to assume that every time they are beating up like a security guard or like wrecking these cars, that is ending the lives of the other participants in the Matrix?
Yes, and Morpheus, there's a scene in the first one where Morpheus very quickly kind of explains that away. It's like, yeah, we're trying to free these people, but because any one of them could turn into an agent, because agents can inhabit anyone's body, like they're all potentially our enemies until we've freed them. So it's okay, you can just kill them without remorse. Just because you know that they could turn into an agent.
Well, and I wonder
for the greater good.
If the machines have any sort of safety protocols, right? If there's sort of an action occurring or some kind of disturbance, if they, sort of have countermeasures to like, well, let's, cut off as many people as we can from this area so that, we don't lose too many of the life-giving human batteries.
Maybe, or maybe they'll just grow a few extra. People are dying and being reborn every day in this world.
We see the farms,
right,
but we don't ever see the actual process or how they grow people, right?
Right.
That's too bad. I bet it's like cool and gross.
Oh, I'm sure it's gross. One thing I really like about the sequels, or this specifically Reloaded, is getting to see much more of the what else is going on in the Matrix, right? Like who else is aware of what's happening and what are they doing within it? You have all these rogue programs were supposed to be deleted, but are just kind of hiding out in the Matrix, living their own life. You get to see like with the keymaker, like the backdoor entrances, like shortcuts between you get to see more of what the framework of the program looks like and not just the simulation aspect of it.
Are we to understand that in the same way that Tron featured a man trapped inside a computer, that Neo is essentially just wandering around through like a copy of Windows 10?
Yes.
Right? Like the keymaker is like, he's just like a password management system.
Right. Absolutely.
And then like Seraph is just like antivirus software or some shit like that. Is that what's going on here?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Boring.
No, but I that's the part I think is that's the part I think is cool. It's just like why are all these people doing this? It's like, oh, because
well, they're not people.
Not people, but I mean like why are all these characters doing these things or why are they here? And you get to see that there's a world beyond what even Neo and Morpheus's like perception of what the Matrix is, you know.
But if all these programs are performing their functions, some of their functions are translated into weird human behaviors.
But they're not performing their functions. They are all those characters, the Merovingian, the Keymaker, Seraph. These are all programs that have gone rogue.
I suppose. I mean,
they're
still doing what they're supposed to do.
I mean, maybe we find that at the end in the overall greater all scheme of things, you know.
Yeah.
In the mathematical destiny or whatever it is, but within the movie, or Agent Smith, you know, like the very fact that his program was supposed to be retired, but then he decided not to, and now he's going on this weird megalomaniac thing to take over the entire Matrix, and then after that, the entire robot machine world.
He's a real delight, despite that the sort of corny, copying himself nonsense. They give him a ton of fun dialogue, and he really like hams it up, like as this sort of in the same way that Michael Fassbender kind of goes over the top in Alien Covenant. I think Agent Smith kind of does a lot of the same things, and it's very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I mean, and also the copying himself would be fine if it wasn't for those like stupid like one-liners that he has whenever he copies himself. Like, what does he say? Like, if you can't beat him, join him. And he's like, there's that one point where like he's like copying one guy, and the guy goes, "It's you," and he goes, "That's right, me," and copies him, and then the copy goes, "Me too." And I was like, those are terrible.
Well, what was he supposed to say?
Nothing.
Well,
just nothing.
That's boring.
Why would these clones be talking to them? Now
because they're rogue programs, Elliot. You just said they're not performing their function properly. So of course they're gonna have one-liners and quips and all kinds of nonsense.
I do like that they're not necessarily completely a hive mind, in the sense that sometimes when they assimilate a more powerful program, the other Agent Smiths are afraid of the new Agent Smith.
Yeah, if you look in the background, you see in various scenes they have all kinds of like different goofball reactions, and it's a lot of fun. Like at any given moment, they're either gonna like cringe or nod their head or like giggle or say something, and it's as if he can't quite control them all.
Yeah.
And yet, by the end of the trilogy, they're all just standing there watching, completely, obedient. So, I don't know. But, that's how machine learning works, right? It starts out kind of glitchy and clunky and weird, and then refined and elegant and working completely as expected.
What do you think of the action scenes in the Reloaded, since that is obviously one of the main draws and one of the things that blew everyone's mind in the first movie? Like, how do you think these ones stack up against the first one, or even the out of the entire trilogy?
This movie features some of the most impressive action sequences of all time. And because the movie is sort of sparse, there's a lot of kind of dialogue sequences and characters standing around talking and being philosophical and things like that. They stand out that much more. The fight scene at the chateau with the Merovingians, goons, but then obviously the highway, like the freeway chase.
Oh, the chase scene is phenomenal.
Absolutely unbelievable. They wrecked like two or 300 cars they're on like a Air Force base.
They built a fake 2 miles of fake highway or something.
Yeah, just unbelievable stuff. And if you watch what's going on in some of these shots, one car will start to flip, and I'm so glad that so many of those shots are in slow-mo. Normally I'd be like, the slow-mo is dragging everything down. You can take a minute to appreciate what the hell's happening in some of these scenes where one car will flip and 3 others will like twist sideways and like be standing on one end, and one car actually launches completely upside down and like fires itself onto the top of another car, and there's an incredible like third person shot from inside another car watching that happen.
Yeah,
it's just breathtaking stuff.
The chase is phenomenal. There's a lot. It's predominantly practical effects. The CGI that is in it is pretty seamless. And there's even stuff where I watched like a breaking down of the scene. I was like, oh, I did not realize that wasn't practical because it was handled so well. Unlike some stuff in the other parts of the movie, because like you said, like, this movie has some of the best action scenes committed to film, but also has some of the most baffling ones at other times too.
Yeah, and I think probably the freeway chase is the best merging of the two. There's definitely still some dodgy CGI, and then that final kind of semi-impact and explosion, but obviously like that would be nearly impossible to do in a practical and safe way. Right. So that's understandable, but yeah, that freeway chase is incredible. The other scenes that stand out, like I said, the fight scene at the Merovingians. Yeah, I really like the fight scene between Neo and Seraph, who's played by Colin Chu, who is a pretty accomplished martial artist. He's been in a lot of Jet Li movies. He's worked with Jackie Chan and Stephen Chow and plenty of others. A lot of people, aren't very interested in that because there isn't a ton of wire work or kicks or anything like that. But as far as like portraying like a struggle and also showing off martial arts, that's kind of permeated throughout the movie. The style in which they showcase the martial arts, there's a lot of sweeping camera movements or stationary camera movements with some kind of fun kind of zooms in and out as a reference to kind of classic kung fu movies. But
it has a very much more old school feel.
Yeah, but for the most part, they're allowing the martial arts to show themselves off, and like you can just kind of appreciate the beauty and how all that looks versus something like The Bourne Identity or Nolan's Batman films where you can hardly tell what's going on because the fighting isn't that particularly good.
Which I do think sometimes can be effective for
definitely
individual fight scenes, but like a lot of the times it's just overused or used to cover something up or a bad stylistic choice. I find that fight between Neo and Seraph much, much better than something like what do they call it? The giant Agent Smith brawl.
Yeah.
Where Neo's fighting 100 Agent Smiths at the same time. That Seraph fight is a much better fight for as brief and simple as it is.
Yeah, and it also has a point to it, right?
Right.
He's sort of acting as the bodyguard for the Oracle and wants to make sure that Neo is indeed the one and not just some random goof. And so he's got to test him by fighting him, which I think is neat because it sort of points to Seraph as possibly being one of the previous ones.
Oh, I never thought about that.
That's something I kind of on this watch through I started thinking about. characters like the Merovingian, characters like Seraph, and actually Seraph later on in the Matrix Revolutions, there's some dialogue that even kind of cements it, because he says to Agent Smith during a confrontation, "I've beaten you before."
That's true.
Implying that, they've kind of already been through this rigmarole. So
see, now I thought about that. I kind of thought about that in the sense of, because he's not as powerful as Neo, but he's more powerful than an average person in the Matrix. So that's why he would stand a chance against an agent.
He also appears different to Neo, right?
That's
he's got
true.
that orange glow,
right?
Which, again, in Revolutions would become kind of central and critical to the plot and become extremely significant. So
yeah, that's what I never. Yeah, that's an interesting take.
Yeah, Seraph is awesome, but I actually think
but he couldn't be. But Seraph is a program, not a human that's been awoken.
I suppose I think that this is, I can't remember if this is my theory or if I heard about it somewhere else or read about it or whatever, but I think that when, obviously there's been 6 versions of the Matrix, when the previous one makes the choice and decides to take, however many people it is from the Matrix to restart Zion, I think that the one is sort of absorbed into the system.
Wow, okay.
And that's where you get characters like there's a reference, what's her name? Persephone?
Oh, I don't know.
Monica Bellucci's character.
Oh, I don't know what her name is.
But she references, she's like, when me and my husband first came here, he was more like you.
Yeah.
And then over time, he became something else. So it's like the one gets absorbed into the system and then just becomes something else. So like he was sort of the Merovingian is sort of a corrupted version of the one who sort of lusts for power and indulgences, and he's kind of the id running wild, right? He's all horned up and giving people orgasms in restaurants and stupid shit like that.
If the movie spent more time exploring these ideas rather than just endless conversations about like what is real this, is real that,
the problem here is choice.
The pseudo intro to philosophy 101 conversations.
See, that's what I liked about it.
That you're having at a community college,
That's what I liked about it when I first saw it. I was like, I recognized all these ideas and concepts from my philosophy classes. I was like, oh, right. I understand these words. This is great. And everybody else was just scratching their heads. So I felt, that feeling of superiority.
Yeah, I just saying, like, I understand what they're doing. Like the first one, I feel did a little better job of just taking a pretty basic concept from philosophy and running with it as a story set off point, where as the sequels go along, like they could have all benefited from, about 30 minutes trimming of these pseudo intellectual dialogue scenes.
It's true, but I feel like most of these characters delivering this dialogue and these scenes is kind of like pleasant and soothing in a way. And then it's a nice like cool down in between all the action sequences.
It's more interesting to me when like Agent Smith, poses these philosophical questions, because he hasn't thought about any of these things prior. He's just like, I'm a guy here to do my job. I'm a program. That's what I do. And now he's had like this beginning self-realization.
Software having an existential crisis.
Yes. So when he's just freaking out and being like, did you know I was going to do that? But if you knew I was going to do that, then you did this and then that's, and then I'm blah, blah, blah. And he's just going off on these little tangents. That to me works way better than Morpheus going like, I don't believe in fate. Wait, yes, I do.
Oh, don't get me started on Morpheus.
And the movie can never really decide if they believe in fate or personal choice.
Well, Morpheus starts off in the first Matrix as this sort of spiritual leader, and seemingly someone who knows what's going on. But then as you get into Reloaded, he doesn't know shit. He knows as much as everyone else. It's just when he gets in the Matrix and puts on his John Lennon sunglasses, he has more sort of cryptic things to say than the next person. Mm-hmm. And he also believes in this prophecy that seemingly no one else does. Like it's like he made it up.
Right.
And also, like, why would you trust the Oracle? The Oracle is part of this machine program.
Well, they don't even know they didn't even know that she was a program until the second one, when Neo could start like looking at the code all the time. But they should have.
What did they think she was? Just a person?
Right. Yeah, that's never true. That's not a flaw of this movie or the first movie. That's a flaw of the whole franchise. Is these things that we're just supposed to outright accept as a given.
But at the same time, I can see how you could rationalize it as, the quintessential human delusion, right? It's hope. They're hoping that they're finding something to believe in all this strife and chaos because there's nothing else, right? They have nothing. And then all these people have created like these splinter religions, right? Like the Link's girlfriend has all I don't know what it is. She's got all these goofy necklaces and stuff, and he's like, I don't believe in that stuff. He doesn't believe in jewelry, I guess. I don't know what that means. But everyone's sort of like just grasping at straws because life is garbage. They're living in Zion in fucking the plumbing world, and it's terrible.
Well, that's where I'm saying these concepts could have been more interesting if we went into those a little bit more and less into the, what would you call it? Just like musing on the stars conversations.
Yeah, it's
about
vagaries.
What is reality? And then when you encounter the architect, you've had all these conversations about like fate versus choice and blah blah blah. And you encounter the architect, and you find out that it is a destiny, that there is the one, but it's just from a mathematical error.
Yeah,
it's a mathematical destiny, not a supernatural destiny. That's a cool concept, and you could have a more satisfying conclusion to these ideas if they weren't bogged down by the weight of everything else.
One of my favorite moments from that whole architect sort of monologue, and that's actually like one of my favorite fight scenes in the whole series, because they're just trading barbs, right?
Yeah.
But the architect he does his sort of opening salvo of like nonsense, and then Neo says, "You haven't answered my question," and then the architect smirks and goes, "Quite right," as if he was like, I've been rambling off this bullshit, and the speed at which you pick up on that determines my level of like respect for you.
Right. Well, I mean, that's one of the things that's cool, because I think one of the things I think people do miss the point about that scene, is you just pointed out, is everyone always makes fun about how the architect talks. He's like, he's not saying anything. Like, yeah, that's the point. He's just saying a bunch of gobbledygook to try and confuse this guy, and then it doesn't work.
But then also Neo makes the wrong and selfish choice to go save Trinity, right? He does the wrong thing. And then when he gets out of the Matrix and he's like, well, guys, everything was a lie, and, I don't know what to do, but that's that. And
I don't know.
Like, wait a second. Like, you made the choice, dickhead. Like,
I don't know if he actually makes the wrong or selfish choice, because one, at this point, there's still no reason to trust anything that any of these programs are telling you. So if you're just taking what the architect says at face value, then maybe it's the wrong choice. But also, this could just be a lie, another system of control. And also, if Neo believes that there's still a chance to save the world with this new info that the other ones didn't see, then maybe it is not the selfish choice, but the better choice. And ultimately, it does become the better choice, I guess.
But now he'll never know, right? He could have taken the other door, and maybe because he was a special version of the one, he was a unique the one, he was the one of the ones, that he could have done something different rather than whatever was laid out by the architect. But he'll never know because he ran off to pull a bullet out of, Trinity's stomach.
But because going through the other door comes down to the conclusion that everybody in Zion is going to be exterminated, and then he gets to pick like 12 people to repopulate it. So that's what there's a quarter 100 million. There's 250 million people in Zion. So that would be the alternate choice, is just to ultimately doom them definitively to death. Whereas in the other choice, he takes a chance.
I guess.
No, he takes a chance with the lives of 7 billion people, because they said they would exterminate everyone plugged into the Matrix as well and just live on goo.
And wearing tattered sweaters.
Yeah.
But yeah, circling back, the action in this movie is unbelievable, and even the fight scene against the many Smiths is really good and really impressive up until they start doing the CGI bits, because there's sort of a threshold they cross where it's like, whoa, now it's gonna get cartoony. And the initial kind of opening bit is really strong, and the fight choreography is very impressive. And shouts out to Keanu Reeves for just learning martial arts and doing most of that shit. I think there was over like 250 individual moves he had to do for that entire fight, which is absurd. So it's a very impressive physical human feat.
Yes, I agree with the beginning portion of that. That's where a lot of the baffling stuff comes in this movie, and it starts there and continues.
I mean, I think it starts with him being able to fly.
Yeah, but that's from the other. That starts in the other movie. That's the last scene of the other movie.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, the last scene is him, like the camera pans out, and you just see this little thing floating up, and then it comes up right into frame, and it's a Neo flying through the sky.
Oh, that's right. I will say, though, that the flying bit does redeem itself by the end, because when he's racing to save Trinity's life and he's got all that shit flying behind him,
that's awesome.
It is very impressive, and it gives you such a sense of like, this is arguably the most powerful being that exists in this reality.
Or just puts that concept of power, someone had that power into the physical world, because the same thing would be happening when Superman flies by stuff, but we've never seen that. We've never seen the wake of destruction that would occur from someone just using that level of power in the world.
Right. And someone pointed out, I think it was like CinemaSins or something like that. They pointed out that, this was the sort of the prototype, or the model for how Superman should be portrayed like, but this was, however 10 or 12 years prior.
Oh, you're talking about like the Man of Steel or whatever? Yeah.
I still haven't seen those movies, but I've heard things.
I like the first Man of Steel movie.
I hate Superman. Stupid Superman.
Fair enough.
Wake me up when he gets the super dog, Crypto the super dog wearing a cape.
Yeah.
Then I'll watch.
No, but in that the baffling choices made are like the amount of slow-mo close-ups on CGI faces.
Yeah.
Is just like, what? Or even just slow-mo close-ups on the face of a stuntman, which also occurs.
Yeah, and I mean, they did the thing where, Hugo Weaving was the original Smith, obviously, and they got a bunch of guys who looked kind of like him, and then tried to put his face, or a version of his face, on top of them, and especially now, like in the theater, it worked, right? Being broadcast or projected onto a movie theater screen, it worked pretty well. Now I'm watching this on a high def TV in super high HD on HBO Max, and man, I can see all the damn holes.
Right.
All the phony looking stuff, all the guys that don't even look close in the background, who you didn't notice them before, now they're front and center.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, they never really sold it for me, and I think it was because once you show that slow-mo CGI and then transition it into regular speed, you've already become too far aware that you're watching a cartoon. So when you cut to regular speed CGI, it just seems like the cartoon's speeding up. Whereas if they had never done that, you could have cut back and forth much more successfully between real characters and quick, fast cuts of CGI characters.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, and that's something they don't do in Revolution, so it was a lesson learned, I guess. But I don't know how you're editing that scene and go like, you don't stop and say, no, we should speed this scene up and not do a slow-mo freeze frame on Keanu Reeves' CGI face. Doesn't make any sense.
Well, I'm sure at the time they were just like, wow, I can't believe we pulled this off.
Maybe. I mean, yeah, it definitely, it definitely seems like there's a case of the first movie, there was this thing where like, oh, look at all this stuff we pulled off, these new groundbreaking special effects, and we did it. We pulled it off. And now a pressure to like one-up it. Mm-hmm. And maybe from a technical standpoint, a lot of the stuff they were doing was impressive for the time, but not from a narrative movie watching standpoint. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it doesn't work. I think this movie sucks. No, I'm kidding. I like this movie a lot.
I like it too.
No, I think it's pretty easy to forgive some of those flaws, especially like now that we're this far removed. And I think we're going to start seeing that more and more with movies, instead of us forgiving practical effects or the limitations of 70s, 80s, and 90s movies. Mm-hmm. In terms of effects, I think we're going to start forgiving, the levels of CGI, especially for. It's wild though that movies like Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park still look really good
because they made smart choices with the effects.
Well, right. So it was by design by filmmakers who were, came from a different school of thought, and as we progress through the last 30, 40 years of film history, like they're going to become so far removed from that everything's going to kind of change as far as the lens that we're viewing all these movies through. And it'll be interesting to see which ones can stand the test of time and which ones, like this one, will sort of have their gaping holes.
I think you can always forgive the technical limitations of the time. It's just, I think it's more so the narrative choices of that are made. And if those narrative choices affect the special effects, that's what's harder to forgive. If you're using special effects for a narrative purpose, but you make a bad narrative decision with those special effects, that's harder to work around.
And speaking of bad narrative decisions, I think it's time to talk about Morpheus's speech and the subsequent dance sequence from this movie, because that was a big... I think that stood out to everybody, every man, woman, and child that saw this movie.
That is definitely a scene where when the people were making it, they're like, this is going to be so cool.
So inspirational. It's going to, the human condition, the human spirit is going to triumph. This is going to be powerful.
We're going to churn this like gritty, like, like they're playing steel drums and stuff, but we're going to turn it into a rave scene, which there's another thing too with like the technology in Zion is kind of all over the place. Like they don't have clothes that aren't rags. The instruments they're playing are just like old oil drums, yet they have spaceships and lasers and
magnetic fields.
And it's like, you telling me they didn't have speakers and an electric guitar or something for this?
I can sort of see the grain of an idea though, is that they're so dependent on technology that culturally they want to regress to like a simpler, more like primal kind of sort of living. So I guess I get that, but at the same time, Morpheus's speech, first of all, it's fine, but you get these weird, there's some awful cut-ins of him visibly in front of a phony CGI crowd, and like an ADR like portions of his speech, and every time it cuts to him standing there with his fists in the air, it's just like it kills whatever momentum that he had just had like 5 seconds previously, and it's just like it it helps kind of cement this as extremely corny and eye-rolling and just kind of
the speeches, like the motivational, inspirational speeches. I guess the first one really doesn't have one of those, but this one has at least one. Revolutions has a couple.
and that's a bunch. Revolutions is chock full of them.
None of them land. None of them get you riled up and ready to go, you know? Which is unfortunate for multiple reasons.
Well, you want to, ideally, you would side with these people in their struggle,
Right.
but at the same time, like, they're needlessly suffering and their modern life is hell. And, you know, what's the point? Everybody just get back in the Matrix and stop worrying so
Right.
much. This, like, whole, like, oh, we know the truth, and it's, you know, the truth is so important, and it's, we see it for what it actually is and not the artifice of it and all of that stuff. It's like, well, you know, quality of life is certainly something to consider. But yeah, Morpheus, I don't know. This idea, him and Niobe, like flirting. I remember when you used to dance. It's like, some things never change. Blah,
That whole love triangle doesn't work because they make what the other dude Locke. They make him such an irrational bad guy.
Oh, and like Astral Dick 2000, like he's
that it's not believable. There's never any moment whether you feel like there's ever any type of anything going on between him and Niobe. They never feel like they're a couple. You know, they don't feel like a good couple. They don't feel like a bad couple. They just feel like people who know each other. And I know there's relationships like that, but it doesn't even feel like they are in a relationship. So at this back and forth between the three of them, it never feels like it's a love triangle. It just feels like Niobe and Morpheus sort of flirting for some reason.
well,
And
Locke shows no favorable traits.
No.
And he also doesn't act like anyone else.
No.
Like even the sort of rough around the edges people of Zion still like have kind of a softer vibe to them, and he is just like, he is such a hard-edged dick. He's like, this type of person just doesn't exist anymore.
No, exactly. He's so ludicrous in his behavior, and he operates,
and why would she be? She has exhibited no traits that
would be attracted to this guy.
Exactly.
Or
it just doesn't make any sense.
It's nothing like she doesn't have any sort of like, maybe she has like some sort of vulnerability that makes her, you know, susceptible to his type of mental abuse. Nothing, and no positive quality for her to be like, well, you know what? He's an asshole, but also he's got a blah, 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 you know, none of that. And also just as a character in the movie, he exists solely as a plot device, you know, to create tension or move the story ahead at times, but he's so over the top it's not effective, you know.
Yeah.
It's like in the third one, there's a scene where he's like he tells them to blow the EMP to take out the Sentinels. Then they do, and then he criticizes them for blowing the EMP because, like, you just took down all our defenses. And it's like, you don't think ahead. Like, you think we've won right here, but like you did this and you screwed everything up. Like, you told them to do that. Like, so he's literally just there to cause conflict in every scene, even when the conflict is something he's created himself. He's just a character going around in a circle. He's not involved in the rest of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, and he ends up just in Revolutions, he ends up just being so much filler and kind of helping move along like this what ultimately is more like a war movie.
Right.
He's just there to sort of shout things and bark orders at people, and
he doesn't even get the moment of like, he just kind of disappears from it eventually. Like at the end when they're victorious, there's not even a scene of him being like being like, oh my God, they were right, they did it, you know, or even of him being pissed off that he was wrong. That doesn't even happen, you know.
Yeah,
it's just
he could have showed up and been like, wow, Morpheus, you the one.
Like something that provided some level of
stupid.
some level of of capability of reacting like a human, that would have possibly redeemed his character slightly, but instead he just disappears.
Yeah. I wonder if there's something he had that got cut.
I don't know.
I don't think so, but that would be
be
interesting at least.
Now, I will say, and this is probably going to, I don't know how you're going to feel about it. While I do like The Matrix Reloaded a lot more than a lot of people, and I think there's some cool stuff in it. I think there's some cool stuff, ideas that get brought up that this kind of disappear from the story, which is unfortunate because they were intriguing or whatever and possibly could have made the trilogy as a whole better. While I think it has some of the most standout moments of the trilogy, it is actually my least favorite movie of the trilogy as a cohesive whole, and I actually like Matrix Revolutions better than Reloaded as a whole.
See, before I was gonna try and stop you there before you said something really kooky that would make people think that you're starting to lose it. But I, like you, I didn't just watch Matrix Reloaded in order to prepare for this episode. I just wanted to keep going with the story because Reloaded it definitely feels like an in-between.
Yeah.
Right? You start off it feels like you start off in the middle and then you end, with a very unsatisfying kind of cliffhanger. And so it really does encourage you to keep going. And when you sandwich Revolutions and Reloaded together, it feels like one big movie. But Revolutions is definitely like very straightforward, by the numbers, kind of linear storytelling without too many abstract ideas or kind of detours or anything like that. It's very like it moves along and is pretty rewarding. So you get a lot of what you didn't get in Reloaded. So I'm guessing that's what you got out of it.
Kind of. I mean, I think honestly, there's some Reloaded has a couple interesting concepts that are introduced that pay off a little bit better, like the whole train station scene. I think it's kind of cool, and there's a definitive conclusion to how that works rather than starting off with an idea and just kind of abandoning it when you got distracted with a new idea. I think some of the fight scenes are the most boring in this one, like that fight at the Merovingians club with the gunfight with those guys who jump on the ceiling. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
I think that's very dull.
No, it's unfortunately just sort of a rehash of the first Matrix, and it kind of pales in comparison and doesn't really. It's like, here's some more of that, but it's really they didn't have anything. I mean, they already blew their load on that original one, so this just seems like a lesser version of that, unfortunately.
Exactly. Right. And the Agent Smith fight at the end, where it's kind of just turns into a Dragon Ball Z thing, is not the best. There's still some cool stuff in it, and there's some cool...
I think that opening sort of brawl, when they first run towards each other, because you can kind of see the conceptualization of the choreography where Neo's still doing some of his martial arts, but it's much more of a brawling style, and it's just simple blocks and heavy strikes. It's it's real dirty compared to what he's doing most of the time. So stuff like that's really
much
cool.
more visceral.
Yeah. But then they start just flying around and tumbling around, and I mean they're kind of breaking the simulation. You know what I mean? By just sort of flailing around in the middle of the air and, creating these huge impact bubbles and everything, which is sort of cool. But yeah, by the end, it's the fighting doesn't really matter. You're headed towards this end game of, them merging and whatever the fuck.
But what ultimately, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you just said they were just kind of that other fight at the Merovingians just seems like a rehash of the first one, and they already blew their load. You get to this point with the Matrix, the fights within the Matrix itself, as been there, done that. We've seen all this stuff, but I think the action scenes in the real world are predominantly pretty effective. And I know you don't like Zion because it's boring and gross and sad.
Ugly.
But ugly. But I think the battle for Zion is actually
I mean,
really...
like weave a rug or something, like, or it's like like a tapestry, like put up some curtains. I don't know, something. It's just
there are curtains for the 0 windows.
yeah, just decorate for decoration's sake.
Yeah,
it's just fucking awful in there.
There could definitely be character within that world.
Yeah, jazz it up. You have nothing but time to weave, like a blanket or some curtains, some drapes, something. I don't know.
I know. Paint a picture, put it on the wall.
A drop cloth. You ever heard of a drop cloth?
Oh my god. What happened to needlepoint? Does needlepoint not exist
anymore? Yeah, man. They should have like laser needle points or something.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that the battle for Zion is very effective. I think most of the action choreography is pretty good for the most part, and also just narratively, like they do very well in the sense that like everybody has a job that has to be done. Like there's all these different characters, and this person has to do this, so this can happen, and that, and like so you create a lot of tension build up to like if everyone doesn't do their job right, this one thing that doesn't happen, and then everyone loses, So I think it does a very good job at orchestrating drama and tension in that respect.
Oh yeah, it's really breathtaking and sort of edgier seat thrill ride stuff, like all the battle scenes against the machines, and then the little sort of sub fight between the little teams with the rocket launchers and against the drills. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's definitely something that gets you... We talked about, like, sometimes not really caring or getting motivated about certain characters or speeches that don't inspire. But, like, in that scene, I care about everybody that's involved, even that annoying kid character.
Oh, man, that damn wiener.
He's like... he's annoying.
Neo, you're my hero, Neo. I love you so much. Do you want... One day I'm going to grow up and we're going to get married.
He's insufferable... in all of Reloaded, in most of Revolutions, and even though he's so annoying, like ultimately, like I end up rooting for him in his final like heroic moment, even though he's a fucking insufferable character up until that point, because I think the scene is orchestrated so well.
I hate his final moment so much.
Where he goes, "Neo, I believe."
No. That's all well and good. I'm talking about when he declares that the war is over just because the machine stopped for a second.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He even after the battle, his battle moment where I'm like, yes, do it, kid. You can do it. After that, he's instantly insufferable again. Like I hate the character, but it's just in that one moment I care about him, which is, I think, shows how well that segment of the movie is executed.
Yeah. Well, now we've transitioned into just talking about the whole series, haven't we?
I guess we have. We haven't talked much about the first one, but whatever.
No, everybody knows the first one. Get out of here.
It's like, it's good. There's a couple dumb things in it. Who cares?
No, but it was all new and fresh and exciting, and you're like, where is this going? What's going to happen? I don't know. I don't understand anything. Yeah, now it was like, you jump ahead to the sequels, and you're like, okay, now I'm looking to get some satisfaction and some resolution, and I need to know where all this is going. And
well, and I mean, like, the sequels are huge and bloated and can't hold up under their own hubris of ideas and just... too many things going on at once, none of them really fleshed out entirely. But at the same time, like, the expectation level for those sequels was so ludicrous.
Oh yeah.
That
they set themselves up for disappointment, unfortunately. The bar was like impossibly high.
Right. And then the audience expectations, like, honestly, probably the best thing to do, like I said, would be to not make a movie, the sequels that are as action oriented or like kung fu movies, like they have to take a completely new route because of how the first one ends. But no one would have accepted that either,
You're saying they wouldn't have accepted the programming? They would have rejected it?
They would have rejected the programming.
One thing I have been wondering is, do you think that the twins are some kind of analog for the Wachowskis? Like, is this their kind of, without actually being played by them, is this their like Hitchcockian sort of cameo in
I don't
Matrix
know.
Reloaded?
I don't know. I know they. I recently I was listening to an interview with, I can't remember if it was with both of them, and it was a recent interview. So it was after both of them going through transition and stuff, and they did talk about putting things in the movie like that as representations of themselves or what was going on with like in the first one they said that the character Switch is not a trans character but is a metaphor for a trans character or a trans person.
Oh, interesting.
Because her name is Switch. In the one world, she's not allowed to be herself, and then there's the way she's born versus the way she sees herself within the Matrix, and all these things. So
is she the one she's the only one dressed in white?
Yes.
I knew it. So, and that, I feel like that is part of the motif, right? Because the twins are the only ones dressed in white.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
And I know at some point the Wachowskis they both had dreads, and some of the dialogue that the twins have is sort of like, I feel like is kind of like, ha ha ha, what if the directors would think or say this?
Sure. Yeah. I never thought about that, but that's a good point.
It's like they're going through the freeway chase like halfway through, and it's like, you're in it, and it's been going on for a while, and they both sit in the truck and they go, "We are getting impatient." Yes, we are. You know what I mean? It's like that feels like kind of like an inside joke that a director would just create.
Right,
Plus,
like,
the characters are just kind of there for like no reason.
No, I mean they're
to
just
be like goons
to be
and
cool
enforcers.
and like yeah exactly. I don't really. I only caught like a portion of the interview, like on the radio. So, but they were. So I didn't remember them specifically talking about the twins, but they talked about like how throughout the movies there's, I guess, nods about themselves or what themes that they were trying to represent based on their own like personal feelings and struggles of their own identity and stuff. So I would not be surprised if what you're suggesting is accurate. That it is just like a roundabout director cameo without them actually being in it.
Yeah.
But they're not actually twins though in real life. No, yeah, but that doesn't matter.
No, but I mean,
they're siblings.
They're credited here as the Wachowski brothers, right?
Yes, in the first movies. Yes.
Yeah, so they're sort of a unit. They're a collective. So it would make sense that they would kind of fashion themselves as twins.
Right. That's an interesting prospect.
Yeah, that's what I like about this movie is there's a lot of fun stuff to think about. There's a lot of details to consider and things to look at and just think about, and regardless of I don't know. It's like I said, it's the whole movie is sort of a bridge to get from the Matrix to Revolutions and sort of the final battle and all that. But the way they get there is, I think, kind of dazzling. And I think the scenes we've already talked about, right? This handful of like big action scenes, and these characters interacting, and things like Neo facing off with the architect. I think that stuff is really, really interesting. Whether it sort of is completely cohesive or not is obviously up for debate. But I think, Neo is sort of wandering around at this ascended level, meeting these other, like he's sort of ascended into like Valhalla almost, and he's meeting all the different gods and really like understanding his place in the world.
Well, that's, like we said, like both saying like earlier about like how successful some of these ideas are, how well they're executed doesn't necessarily have to do with if they were good or bad ideas. And one thing I like about the movies that I think a lot of people dislike is a lot of people thought the conclusion was kind of unsatisfactory because you don't really have this like, I did it, we beat the bad guys, and it's over, and we're all heroes. You don't really have that because the Matrix is still up. The actual war itself is ended, and the people within the Matrix are going to get a more definitive choice to leave or stay, but it's nothing. It's not like, oh, this side won, this side lost, which is much more like in real life, like the end of an actual war. You know, there's rarely this conclusion where it's like bad guys won, good guys, or good guys won, bad guys lost. But because the movie does present itself as being kind of like a big action movie first, maybe that isn't as successful, even though that's one of the parts about it that I like. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you hit on something. It is more of a like a ceasefire versus the war's over and now we can go live above ground, and the machine city is going to chill out so that like the clouds will separate and we'll be able to see the sun again, and you know what I mean? That sort of idealistic ending is not really, you get to see that inside the Matrix, but not in reality.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's oddly enough too, is like the end of this movie of Revolutions kind of sets up the possibility of another sequel where like the little girl program says to the Oracle, like, will we ever see Neo again? And even though he's like apparently dead, right?
Yeah. He's not even like a little dead, like really dead.
He seems to be completely dead. Like that's the fair assumption. And then the Oracle goes, yes, I suspect we just might. But I think perhaps even though these movies were huge successes, perhaps it was obvious that they're after this one and the disappointment, maybe not in dollars, but in reception, that it might not be the wisest thing to run right ahead with another sequel in the next couple of years because it could flop. But we are getting one this year.
Wow, I think people will go see it regardless.
No, I think people will.
I think people will go see it. They'll just go.
I think the waiting was probably smart, is what I'm saying, in terms of making a sequel. I don't think there was the enthusiasm for a fourth movie right after it ended, but I think now there'll be enough time has passed that people will be intrigued in how it's going to continue.
I think the number of people who are like, the last sequel really turned me off from this franchise are a staggering minority. And I think the number of people who are like, oh, they're doing another one of those, yeah, I'll go see it.
Yeah. No, now for sure. I think it could have been a flop if it came out 2 years after Revolution.
I still think people would have gone and seen it.
Sure, you're probably right, but maybe not enough in the terms of how big the budget is. You know what I mean? Like, is it going to? Sometimes movies make hundreds of millions of dollars, but are still considered flops because they were so expensive to make.
Oh, sure. Well, they can have my money, honestly. If I am still watching Terminator movies and still interested in that franchise, I'll go see whatever they put out, honestly. I don't care how many misfires. Like, I'll give you another shot. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, totally.
Same with Aliens, same with all that shit.
Oh, yeah, of course. Like, we'll all go see it. But
I won't watch a television adaptation, though, in most cases. It took me over 10 years, like maybe 13 years, to watch Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles television show.
But you keep telling me how much you love that show now.
Yeah.
And I've never watched that.
But when it originally came out, I was like, it's stupid. I don't want to watch that Terminator TV show. That's going to be terrible. And now, 13 years later, I was like, there's nothing on TV. Let me give this a shot. And I'm enjoying the hell out of it just because it's more Terminator junk.
Yeah.
It's just more Terminator junk.
Do you remember that there was, before Reloaded came out, there was a short film that was supposed to bridge the two movies called like The Flight of the Osiris? It was like CGI.
The last voyage of the Osiris, yeah.
Right. And the only way you could see it is if you went and saw the movie Dreamcatcher.
Was that the only way to see it?
I mean, eventually it came out like remember there was like that Animatrix DVD? Yeah. And it was on that, and then eventually it was like put on that when that came out like a year later. Or
that's where I saw it.
But if you wanted to see it before you saw Matrix Reloaded, you had to go see Dreamcatcher, and that's how that's how they got people to go see Dreamcatcher, which was
awesome.
The first movie we did on this podcast.
Yeah, that's episode 0.
Yeah. So it's all come full circle.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you find that you really like or just perplexing that you want to add? Like maybe that's not in the what didn't have a spot in our overall rundown, but just you don't want to leave behind or not mention?
That's an excellent question. No, I mean, it's really like all the kind of stuff we laid out. And then, I mean, I have a real soft spot for like the Merovingian, it being like this sort of sleazy, French guy who's like indulging in excesses, and he's just like living it up in the Matrix, like, which is what you should be doing. And I guess he's a bad guy who lusts for power. I don't know what his purpose is, but I'm very entertained by that character and that whole subplot. So but yeah, aside from that, I think that's, like I was saying, it's just sort of this story is just Neo kind of wandering through this pantheon of odd and strange and interesting characters, and seemingly with no particular purpose until the end, and then you get a weird sort of Smith transferring himself into this Bane character, and then cutting himself just to experience what it's like living inside of a flesh bag or whatever.
That's one of my favorite parts, actually, of the whole thing.
Really?
Is yes.
I sort of roll my eyes as soon as he picks up the telephone and gets sucked into it, as if like this is the first time he'd ever discovered that they could do that, and
I don't think it's the first time he ever
previous knowledge of how that worked.
It's the first time they've maybe had the opportunity, and also, it's not even the opportunity, but it is the perhaps it is the forethought, because before, remember, he's a rogue. Now he's a rogue program, right? He's a rogue program, but also no. How could he have done that before? Because
I guess he was still plugged in, right? So he wouldn't even attempt something like that. Okay,
exactly. He
fine.
wouldn't have attempted something like that.
He had the thing in his ear.
The other thing was the only way he was able to answer the phone. It wasn't just him answering the phone. It was him answering the phone after he took over the body of somebody else, which is a new power he has. So he couldn't have done it before. The fact that he didn't do it more frequently once he did it, to get more Smiths out in the real world, maybe that is something that's he would have done in a real world scenario. But there's nothing real about this.
Well, that was the end game, right? And that's why Neo is able to talk the machine mainframe or the giant baby head into letting him go back in the Matrix to stop Smith, because eventually that would be the outcome, is Smith would start infecting people, and he would start infecting machines, and he would just he's the virus, right?
Exactly it. He's the computer virus. I am not also convinced that the Zion isn't also part of the Matrix.
Oh yeah, this idea that there might be levels of the Matrix,
right? Because that's the thing. The portion I was going to bring up is of my this part is always kind of sat funnily with me. Is one of the things that I thought was really cool at the end of Reloaded, when I saw it in the theater, is when Neo develops powers outside of the Matrix, right? Mm-hmm. He just stops a couple sentinels with his hands and then passes out, and everyone's like, "Whoa, how did he do that?" And I was like, "Okay, let's see how this concept is explored in the next movie." And it really isn't explored. Like, he does it again, but there's no one. It's all kind of just taken for granted.
Oh yeah.
No one goes like, "How are you doing that?" Even later on in the movie, where like people are doubting Morpheus, being like, "Oh, Morpheus and his beloved prophecies that Neo is the one." He never goes like, "Oh, hey guys, by the way, Neo can stop machines in the real world now with his mind."
Yeah.
He never brings that up to maybe as like evidence that Neo is actually some sort of superpower god. It's just kind of a thing that happens and never gets talked about, and just is intermittently used here and there, and he can now kind of see things even with when he gets his eyeballs cut out later in the movie and whatnot. And it's like, yeah, this is like, is he just still in the Matrix? Is that the whole thing? Is that how they're going to bring these characters back in the fourth one that's coming out this year?
Yeah, and it's funny because there's characters that provide exposition to explain a lot of the things that he can do inside the Matrix, but they seemingly have no knowledge or comprehension of what he's like outside of it.
Right.
And so you never get anyone kind of even hinting at that kind of stuff, but literally everything else has that. It's almost like they're like, well,
I mean,
if you spend enough time in virtual reality, eventually you'll develop superpowers.
Yeah, if the second this happens, it should be like such a monstrous deal with amongst the other characters within the film, of them just losing their minds, and like they're more impressed when Neo does crazy stuff in the Matrix.
Yeah, Morpheus doesn't even seem to care all that much.
No. Not at all.
He actually seems like kind of disappointed and like bummed, and he was like,
not a single character talks about it,
because literally everything that Morpheus told everybody, because Morpheus was just literally regurgitating shit he heard from the Oracle, and then all that turned out to be a lie, and so he got butthurt and just kind of moped the rest of the movie, and then started crying when his ship got blown up. Give me a break, pal. You can build another ship. Like the fact that, right, like they keep talking about in Revolutions, when they're in the train station, they're talking about, love is just a word, but it's the connection it implies that's, what matters, and blah, blah, blah. They go on and on about, can machines love and this and that, and it's this whole back and forth. But like here we have Morpheus, who's clearly in love with his ship because he has failed at his human relationships, and then his ship gets blown up, and he like just seemingly never recovers from it and then he bounces right back to, he's on the rebound, so he bounces right back to Niobe, displacing Locke. And like, you know what? Like we're here in the future. In this apocalyptic scenario, like the last gasp of human existence, and we can't even like put aside our petty, relationship squabbles and, hurting each other and the awful things that, people do in the dating world, not even for a second.
No, well, if anything, they're amplified. But I mean,
and that's why I hate Morpheus, the character.
Yeah. Did you know that it was originally that role was originally offered to Sean Connery?
Yeah, and he was like, "Wow, I have no idea what this script means. What is this nonsense?" What else? He's notorious for turning down cool shit.
He turned down a bunch of stuff like of fantasy or sci-fi movies around that time that all turned out to be huge hits, like Lord of the Rings, The Matrix, something else.
And I think Lord of the Rings was the other really big one. I couldn't follow it.
And then I goes, okay, well, all these movies are turning into huge hits. I better do one. And then he did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yep.
And then he retired from acting.
Yep. That was it. He also did Dragonheart.
Well, that was a while ago, though. I mean, that was just a voice role.
That's true.
But can you imagine, like, how would that have looked like? Would he have done any martial arts in the movie? Probably not, right?
He couldn't have. Like,
no.
Lawrence Fishburne barely could do it. And, visibly, like, struggling through some of the things, but also doing, putting in the work and doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sean Connery, they never would have been able to make that happen.
Well, I mean, also Morpheus character has like 2 or 3 fights in the whole, like martial arts fights in the whole series. It's not as important for him to have learned all the stuff that Keanu Reeves had to learn. And
no, but it is weird that being as important as he is and sort of mysterious and iconic, that he didn't sort of level up and become more powerful.
That's actually a good point. Or also just maybe. I once was watching an interview with Denzel Washington, and he talked about how he trained for like 8 months for the boxing match in the Hurricane, even though it's just the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
And the rest, there's no boxing in the rest of the movie. And the interviewer said, like, why did you train that long if it's this? And he goes, because you got to sell it, right? If I'm not believable as a boxer in the first 5 minutes, you're not going to believe me as anything else the rest of the movie.
Boom.
So maybe that would have been more important if Morpheus is supposed to be this like super badass who knows all this stuff and whatnot. Perhaps if he had leveled up, as you said, a little bit better, we wouldn't be standing here debating whether or not if Morpheus is just a big whiner or not.
Entertainment Weekly called The Matrix Reloaded one of the 25 worst sequels ever made.
That's bull.
That's absurd. That's the most absurd thing I've ever... Even at my most critical of this movie, it is not even in the top 50.
No. Not at all.
Entertainment Weekly needs to watch more movies.
I mean, ultimately...
Ever heard of Caddyshack 2?
Right, yeah.
Actually, the top 25 worst sequels ever made, most of those 25 movies are Police Academy movies.
Factual.
Without question. And if you want to challenge me on that, go ahead and watch them. They're on HBO Max right now.
No, this movie is not as good as the first movie. People were disappointed with it, but it's still a good movie. If this was the first movie in the franchise, people would love this movie way more.
Oh man, that's something really fascinating to consider. Can you imagine just starting off the movie with Neo being like at his sort of godlike power level, and then kind of working backward from there, like telling the story of how he got there?
Yeah,
that would be kind of interesting.
Or if the movie started with him waking up, and like the that was just like a little 10-minute prologue of how we got to this point or whatever, or a 30-minute.
Yeah, what if he woke up from a dream and it was the dream sequence was literally just the highlights from the first movie?
Yeah, or you could do something like Pacific Rim did, where you have this extended prologue that truly establishes the characters and tells a whole story in and of itself. I mean, that is literally what we said about Pacific Rim, is that prologue could be its own whole movie.
Yeah.
They could have done something like that, and then boom, we start right away with the beginning of this one, and people would love this movie.
It's true, and that's why we're talking about it, because this movie deserves a fair shake and another look, and it's easily one of my... It for a very long time, it was my go-to movie. Like, I would just throw this on and have it playing in the background, and I would perk up when, some of my favorite scenes or characters would come on, and I would just listen to them. And I feel like a lot of the dialogue has a calming effect, and the action sequences are pretty masterful, and some of the best that film has to offer. And yeah. I say give it another look. Pick up a discount DVD or a Ultra HD 4K Blu-ray or some shit, and have a good time. And watch it back to back with Revolutions, because that really is the sort of optimal. Just carve out a 4-hour block where you can sit down and watch the story finish out, and it's really, really pretty satisfying, honestly.
I mean, as you said, it really is more together. They are one big movie. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not really a middle segment. There's two movies in the Matrix world, but just one of them was split in half.
I think we both experienced that phenomenon where it was hard to just end on that. I think I took like a 5-minute break and then just started watching Revolutions right after. I was like, I would like to see more of this.
Well, I think that definitely can happen. It's like this splitting up. Like, they've done that deliberately with like some book adaptations of series that have been turned into movies. Like they did that with Harry Potter. The last book was split into 2 movies, and The Hunger Games. And I remember not seeing the Hunger Games movies, the first 2, in the theater, because I just assumed that it was like a PG-13 battle royale ripoff. And then I got around to watching them on like Netflix or something before the 3rd movie came out. And I was like, oh, these are actually really like these. These are good. And then, but they did that same thing. They took the 3rd book and split it into 2 movies. And when I went and saw the 3rd movie, which was the first half of the final book, the movie came and ended, and I just didn't really care because it only felt like half a movie.
Yeah.
And then, so I didn't see the 4th one in the theater, but then ultimately when it was on Netflix, I watched all of them in a row, and in a row, they all worked together.
Welcome to our episode about the Hunger Games. We'll be starting off with, Catching Fire? Is that the first one?
I think so.
I don't know.
I think you are correct. But yeah, anyway, like you said, give this movie another watch. It's good. It's got some good stuff in it. Got some dumb stuff in it. Who cares?
It's got all it's got all the stuff. It's got stuff you want. It's a movie.
Yeah. It's the ultimate experience.
It's got visuals. It's got audio. You can turn on the subtitles.
That's true.
Go nuts.
And like you said, like the you can watch it on DVD or whatever, but also like you said, it's on HBO Max, just like the Police Academy sequels. So
damn straight.
You can hit them all up in one spot. We'll be back with more movies in the sci-fi summer.
Yeah, sci-fi summer is going to keep rolling as long as summer is here. So we're not turning the calendar yet. We got some good stuff coming up. We just did Ghost in the Machine, which just hit HBO as well. So
did it? Great.
Yeah.
Check that out for sure.
Yeah, give that a watch, and then man, we got some things coming up. Maybe we'll watch Alien Nation or Beyond the Black Rainbow, and we're definitely gonna get to the Country Bears.
It's gonna happen.
The Country Bears is happening. So I hope you like bears and country and bears living in the country.
All right, well, I guess that's it for today.
Don't forget to save your password, and until next time, the dumpster is closed.
Goodbye, everyone.
Oh my God, there's Morpheus! Woo! I love you, Morpheus!
Zion, hear me!
He's having a huge orgy at his place later tonight. At least that's what many of us have heard.
It is true, what many of you have heard.
Morpheus! What can we expect at this orgy?
Machines!